I didn't know Sheila McKechnie. My wife was, Lindsay, was instrumental in setting up these awards because she admired Sheila so much. They were both Scottish, they both had a university in common, and she knew about her reputation, as I did, as a dynamic and brilliant campaigner who did things about unfairness wherever she saw them. So that's why we're gathered here today, to remember this brilliant campaigner, the tradition of her work, and the point of these awards is to celebrate that work and to celebrate people who are in her tradition, and to encourage them and to celebrate the importance of what they did. I thought I'd just say a tiny bit about the NSA stories that we're publishing at the moment, because there is, I think, a connection with why we're here today. And there are 2 or 3 people who are connected with that story. Edward Snowden, who was the original whistleblower, Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras, who were the journalists involved who Snowden made initial contact with. And in the way of these things, sometimes people are bad at thinking about the issues because they get easily distracted. And the main distraction that is quite frustrating is to question who Snowden is and whether Greenwald and Poitras, but particularly Greenwald, are really journalists. And the answer is yes, they are, but they're also activists. And some people in this debate, they use the word activist, they produce it and say, Greenwald's an activist, he's a campaigner, as if that negated everything that he writes. And I think the future of journalism is going to be more complicated because it will include people who are activists, i.e. people who want to change things. And to my mind, anybody who goes into journalism and doesn't want to change things is a bit odd. Why are you in journalism if you think the world is a perfect world and you can't think of anything that should be changed? And the more you get into the material that Snowden has given, at great risk to himself, whatever you think of Snowden, and again, we're invited to believe he's either a hero or a villain, and I think probably even he would admit that he's probably both, in different people's eyes, because it depends on where you place the public interest. The material that he's given us and that he gave at the age of 29, knowing that that was probably the rest of his life over, because he had seen what had happened to Bradley Manning before him, I think you have a kind of duty to look at this material and say, well, what is it that he risked his life to do, to hand it over? And I think what he is peeling back is this collision of public interest, so that there are people who simply assert the public interest in security, and then there are people who say, but there's another public interest involved, which is the implications of what happens when you put entire populations under some form of surveillance without their consent. And I think at the minimum, it's the duty of a newspaper to encourage a debate about what that means, because nobody in this room was consulted about whether it was okay for people to collect and store and analyze your emails and your telephone conversations and your text messages. And you may think it's all right. You may think that's a reasonable thing that you're prepared to give up in return for a form of collective security. Or you may not, but the point is, no one's asked you. You may think it's all right to insert trapdoors in all the software that we use because it allows the NSA in through that trapdoor. Or you may be smart enough to work out that if there's a trapdoor that the NSA can get into, other people can get in there as well. So there are vulnerabilities which would make you more vulnerable, even if it helps the NSA get in there. And I think the penny is finally dropping what this story is about, and why Edward Snowden and Glenn Greenwald, at some risk for themselves, and have sought to introduce this into the public domain. So that's just my little thought today about the activism and how it's not enough to simply dismiss people as activists and therefore say they're not journalists and therefore we don't have to take it seriously. But there is, regrettably, a lot of that about.